back. Well, Pride Month here in Israel is once again stirring controversy, with council inspectors in Jerusalem taking down a Pride banner which was put up on the US consulate. It's understood the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem ordered the move, with the consulate releasing a statement saying the United States is committed to protecting LGBTQ and other marginalised communities around the world, adding all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Now, according to posts on social media, the flag has now been put up. And joining me from Jerusalem is Eyal Laria, who's a former candidate for the Jerusalem City Council. Eyal, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time today. I want to start off just by chatting to you a little bit about the history of Pride Month in Jerusalem. This is not the first time it's seen acts of this type of nature, is it?
Definitely. Thank you for having me here. I think that, like a lot of things in Jerusalem, every answer needs to start with, well, it's complicated. And when you talk about Pride Month in Jerusalem, it's definitely complicated. Though I must say that in recent years, since a tragic event in the Pride of 2015, when a girl was murdered by a fanatic ultra-Orthodox, there are tens of thousands of people that coming every year to Pride in Jerusalem, and the city council generally gives enough in money to actually allow the Pride to happen. This deputy mayor called Aryeh King is a racist, xenophobic, homophobic person that got a position just recently, and he tried to show a different side of Jerusalem, but most people here are supporting the community. They're supporting the LGBT community, and they think that we, as a person who lived in Jerusalem his entire life, I was born and raised here, I think that we have a place in this town as well, and this is what we're fighting for. I think I think to have a deputy mayor like this just gives you another reason to go out this Sunday and go to the protest.
And tell me, what has your own personal experience been like growing up in Jerusalem when you are faced with this type of discrimination?
Well, it depends. It really depends on the neighborhood. It depends on the time of the day, and it depends on the time of the month. I think that something that is very special in Pride Parade Day in Jerusalem is that I think it's the only day that I can feel truly safe being myself in town. I love Jerusalem. I enjoy living here. But I think it's you can be terrified from time to time. There are a lot of little comments that you get on the street. I think that my transgender friends are having more trouble than I am, and getting harassments constantly and feeling like they cannot be safe and secure in their own city. I think that's a very tough emotion to carry on with in the daily life, and I think that Pride Day is very special on that specific matter. And also I think that it's important to add that a lot of people in Jerusalem are in the closet because they were raised in conservative families, whether they are Jewish conservative or Muslim conservatives. And Pride Day is their day to kind of escape to a different world and to experience the Jerusalem that I experience in my daily life as a secular guy in Jerusalem that can be proudly bisexual and have a lot of gay friends and go to the gay bar in town and having a liberal way of life. And I think that this is something that Pride gives to people that have come from different backgrounds that I was privileged to come from.
You're certainly right there, Eyal. And just finally, talk me through how Pride Month, especially in Jerusalem, will be celebrated this month, given that we are in real unprecedented times with, of course, the coronavirus pandemic.
So I think everywhere around the world, the Pride parades are being kind of canceled. And we have different small events, small gatherings throughout this week and throughout next week, and that people can join. There are a lot of different subjects. Some of them are lectures, some of them are kind of parties or street parties that you can enjoy on Friday and all along the weekend. And on Sunday there is a main event in Gan Ha'atzmaut, in Independence Garden in the center of the city, just across to where the flag was ripped out yesterday, and to have a big event. I think there's going to be thousands of people coming to have the equivalent of Corona time of the Pride Parade in Jerusalem.
All right, Eyal Laria there. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, and I really hope the rest of your month is enjoyable.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Now, some welcome news for cannabis smokers here in Israel, with new laws passed by the Knesset during the first hearing decriminalising personal weed possession and use if it's under 50 grams. The law passing by a majority 61-11, although ultra-Orthodox members of parliament didn't cast their vote, they were absent from the hearing. Now, as the debate over annexation ramps up, so too does the legal debate around it, with Israel's argument unpopular among experts in international law. There, the strong consensus is against annexation and saying that an annexation plan would be illegal. But if arguing outside the law, Israel may have more of a chance to win at least some hearts and minds. Senior correspondent Owen Alterman breaks it down.
With annexation, international law is less on Israel's side, so Israel will likely be making its case in a different way. On the international law, most leading experts think that Israel's annexation would break the law. Their argument? That Israel is acquiring territory by force, meaning taking part of somebody else's country. Israel gained control over the West Bank through a war, the 1967 Six-Day War, even if that war was a defensive one. And now, for parts of the West Bank, Israel might now say it's the owner, violating the rule. The Israeli government will claim annexation is legal, that the West Bank never belonged to anyone else, including not to the Palestinians. So why can't Israel have it? But Israel's stronger arguments are outside the law, that annexation is part of a long-term plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that Israel would be working with the United States, the world's leading power, that the Jewish people has a historic connection to the land, that settlements and the Jordan Valley are important for Israel's defense, such that Israel is not leaving them in any case. This is the case Israel will make, even if, it has to be said, outside of Washington, few are convinced.
And tonight, be sure to tune in for a special edition of The Rundown beginning at 8 p.m. Israel time, again at 6 p.m. Eastern, broadcasting live from a West Bank settlement. Now, we'll be joined by key figures from past American peace initiatives, top Palestinian officials, and a special panel of leading figures in the settlement establishment. Moving on now, in the shadow of the massive wave of protests sweeping the United States, Americans are arming up and forming militia-style groups. But who exactly are these people that call themselves the Boogaloo Boys, and what is their goal? Ariel Levin-Waldman explains.
Across the United States, protests and riots sparked by the police killing of George Floyd persist and are attracting unexpected guests. Heavily armed men seemingly with any number of loyalties. Some support the police, law, and order. Others come down on the side of protesters.
Cops are a lot less likely to try and tread on people's rights when there's other armed Americans with them. So we figured it's about damn time that or at least I figured that it's about damn time some heavily armed rednecks stood with fellow citizens.
But many of them do have an affiliation. A new militia movement with no leaders and no borders. An internet joke that jumped into the real world with a rifle in hand. Sporting a Hawaiian shirt as a uniform, they call themselves the Boogaloo Boys.
It's what we in the Patriot Militia Movement believe will be the big reckoning. We hope it never happens. We hope we never have to take up our arms and that legislation and democracy do their jobs. But in some cases, they just do not. And in those cases, resistance to tyrants is obedience to God, and the tree of liberty sometimes has to be watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
The rhetoric seems indistinguishable from the constitutionalist and patriot militias of the 90s and early 2000s, but the new Boogaloo is unrelated.
Electric Boogaloo, the ultimate show.
It started as an internet meme years ago. The name, a call out to an 80s breakdancing movie, Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. On gun forums, it was a warning. Attempts to ban or confiscate weapons would be met with American Revolution 2 Electric Boogaloo. But politics brought it to the streets.
It's directly tied to those red flag laws. Victims like Breonna Taylor, but victims like her, Duncan Lemp, George Floyd, I mean, all this has ignited a local response to things. It's no longer just focused on Waco or Ruby Ridge with ATF and FBI. It's being, exposed more locally now.
A pushback against waves of new gun control measures brought the self-proclaimed Mujahideen into the streets of Virginia, and a series of police killings of gun owners gave the fledgling movement its martyrs and common cause with Black Lives Matter protesters.
All-inclusive freedom for everybody, regardless of your color, your religion, your sexual orientation, gender choices, whatever it is. You deserve freedom just as much as anybody else.
But NGOs and law enforcement warn they are dangerous. Left-leaning observers call the movement far-right and racist. The 4chan message boards where the memes began were also home to white supremacists who see the Boogaloo as fertile ground for a race war.
So among the white supremacist version of the Boogaloo Boys, we absolutely do see anti-Semitism, and it's rampant. But a lot of what it is that it's kind of these old tropes that they're just reapplying to this new idea of the Civil War and what it'll look like. Because, again, their conception is based along racial lines, and for them, Jewish people are not white, and so they are therefore the enemy.
The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives issued an alert to Baltimore police last month, warning the Boogaloo was a bunch of firearms extremists that could represent a threat to police.
Cool. Yeah, okay, it looks pretty cool.
In May, an Air Force sergeant and self-proclaimed Boogaloo boy killed 2 law enforcement officers in California. Others with white supremacist ties were arrested with plans to attack Floyd protests and Virginia gun rallies to spark mass conflict.
There are racists in the ideology. I cannot deny that. I'd be lying if I said there weren't. We take every opportunity we can to disavow them, to distance ourselves from them, and that's the best we can do.
The challenge is that the Boogaloo is an open-source insurgency. Anyone can generate the memes or wear the Hawaiian shirt. The only constants are a love of weapons, dislike of the status quo, and the expectation of mass insurrection. Those ideas are shared by far-right race warriors, socialist revolutionary Boogaloo channels, and libertarians who say they just want to be left alone.
I like the idea that the politicians are a little scared of you.
If there's any common thread to the heavily armed Boogaloo believers, it's their view that American society is sick and the cure will be bloody. But with so many different ideas of what the end goal should be, it's anyone's guess who fires first.
And finally, the music is back on in Barcelona. This following months of silence due to the coronavirus lockdown, with this theatre in Spain opening its doors to an audience of plants. That is right, no crowds, just green leaves, more than 2,000 seats of them in fact, with the concert even live streamed so people could watch the show at home. Goes to show how many things which were once normal have changed as cultural venues are now allowed to open. We will leave you with these images. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for watching.